In today's video, we're going to be diving into the upcoming pattern, looking at a period of warmth for the early portion of February. But the premise today is really going to be that the majority of models do have us returning to cold around that 8th, 9th, 10th time frame of February and beyond. Some long-range model guidance suggesting that the polar vortex may be about to split, which is exactly what we saw happening in early January that led us into that very cold, basically three and a half weeks of the beginning of January up until now. So there is the possibility that we reach the midway point of February and we see the rest of February be very cold and even into early March, perhaps. Obviously, it's just a possibility. And so much so, it's only a possibility that I'm going to show you multiple model runs today, some of which disagreeing. So I want to show you that there is, from model run to model run, some models that are not picking up on this. So it's only a chance that we're picking up on as of now. So I don't want anybody to take this as gospel. We're at the very early stages of this, and very well in the next few days, it might become a very real and very high probability, but as of now, it's just an increasing chance for now. So that will also lead to some snowfall, as we'll see on the models today, some major snowstorms as a result of that on those models that do call for the cold. So definitely stuff to look into. Let's take a look first off at the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook from the National Weather Service. And this will be for the 4th through the 8th of February here. And we do see some cold along the West Coast. We call this a negative PNA. You've heard me say PNA a lot probably, and that as a result basically forces the warmth to head into the east, and we see this happening. Throughout January and most of December, we saw, and most of January because we're still in January except for the final few days that we're looking at here, we had a positive PNA, which is warmth along the west, and that led to massive cold in the east. So this PNA out west highly correlates with the temperatures in the east, and it's really a huge anomaly. So we see the warmth out here for the 6 to 10 day period, again 4 through 8. The precipitation is going to look pretty decent as well for the west. This is why they're seeing and going to be seeing massive amounts of snow for all three major mountain ranges out there. And a lot of the east here, I think that the very far north could still see quite a bit of snowfall for the early February timeframe. And we're going to see a lot of rainfall and even thunderstorms and showers throughout this period for the further south areas. 8 to 14 day temperature outlook. Keep in mind, this is all from yesterday. They don't update these until later in the day. So these are valid as of January 29th. We do see that it continues to look cold out west, although it does spread further into the Midwest and areas in the plains. And we continue, as a result of this negative PNA, to see warmth trending in for the East Coast and a lot of the South Central as well. The precipitation during this period would also look very similar, highly above average in the mountainous west and areas in the lower elevations across those regions, and then a lot of the east in the above average category as well. So again, thunderstorm severe weather is going to be a big player, and then the further north areas, still snowfall is going to be on the table here. The 30-day outlook, and this is for January 1st through 30th, is going to tell the full story. We saw a lot of cold throughout the south central states and a lot of the central states in general, and then a lot of the eastern states like areas in the Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, and Southeast. One of the coldest Januaries we've seen in like 20, 30 years. Maybe 2013 to 2014 would compete with this. There might be one or two others in that 30 year period, but it is a very far below average January, and certainly the coldest one we've seen in quite a while here. As we take a look at the European model, we're only going to look at one European model run because this model has been much more consistent with the cold. We're going to look at the GFS model in a minute as well, but we're going to look at this overnight's 0Z model run, which is the overnight run, and this day's 12Z GFS model run as well, where there's going to be pretty big differences in what it's calling for. So I want to point out that the models are jumping all over the place a little bit, especially the GFS. Just so that you know, this isn't a guaranteed cooldown, and not even every single model run has it, but the majority do. So that's kind of the premise here today, like I mentioned. Right out of the gate, we do see a low developing here with a cold front dragging, warm front here, and this is why we have severe weather possible today for areas like Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, perhaps Mississippi and Tennessee as well. Typically, the warm front area doesn't feature as much thunderstorm activity, and it's more like persistent rain and even frozen precipitation sometimes. Not on this instance here on this frame, but likely going to see some wintry weather to the north from this eventually. We do see back out west, there's some snowfall over Colorado and New Mexico as a result of this storm. So let's go ahead and move forward towards tomorrow afternoon. And by Friday afternoon on January 31st, this will be the look. Low right here again, snow along that warm front here for areas of the Great Lakes and Northeast. And then you have a larger dragging cold front at this point where severe weather and thunderstorms will be possible throughout these areas, even overnight for portions of the southeast coast. Going to be a possibility. If you've looked at the forecast, Friday is going to be quite warm along the east, especially for the mid-Atlantic and southeast. We're talking 70s for a lot of folks, upper 60s for others very far to the north. So highly sufficient for thunderstorm activity, pretty rare, but definitely a possibility. We do see a massive storm system approaching the west, and it's really just going to stay stormy after this point. Out west, we're going to see snowfall abundant, rainfall abundant, and it's going to be harder to find the dry days than the stormy days moving forward for quite a few days here out west. Let's take a look at what happens by Saturday on the 1st of February, and we continue to see the snowfall and rainfall out west. This storm system is basically left, and it's offshore now. We are left with a not super warm pattern as a backdoor cold front has moved through after that storm, but if you've watched the previous videos, we're going to see this jump up and down over and over and over again. As we move towards Sunday here on February 2nd, we do see this low that was the original low that moved on the west coast is now bringing some snowfall showers to eastern Canada, areas of the Great Lakes, and even the northeast here as a little bit more of a minor snow system. We continue to see what I would call a zonal flow, which is where the jet stream is almost moving not up and down, but just straight across, which is going to lead to some colder temperatures for the north and some milder temperatures in the south. You would think that this is average, but really these are not the most common. Typically, we do have waviness in there, so this is actually a quite uncommon jet stream pattern. We do see it from time to time, but it's not the most standard jet stream pattern by any means. We do get a little bit of heavier snowfall overnight Sunday into Monday for the Northeast. As you can see, that moderate band of snowfall for New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine does move in. And we see our second storm out west continuing to bring snowfall and rainfall depending on your location. For the day on Monday, the 3rd of February here, we do see this low out west, still some snowfall and rainfall happening out there, and we are seeing a warm push overall in the east for the 3rd here. So another warm day perhaps for Monday on, again, the 3rd of February. Tuesday, the 4th here, it's a lot of the same. I mean, it's hard to really point out any differences. The only thing is that we have some isolated thunderstorms starting out here in the deep south, and this is eventually going to become a low and bring about another round of potential severe weather and thunderstorms, as well as just overall storminess to many different folks. So by Wednesday, we see this overall storminess in the warm pockets begins to spread. We have isolated thunderstorms, perhaps as far northward as like Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky. Might just be some showers depending on the actual temperatures. As you know, when we're looking at like 5 days out, there could be, some 5-degree differences in the temperatures. So if it's a little bit cooler, that might lower the potential. But if it's a little bit warmer, or even on par with this, I would say that we would have the potential for some isolated thunderstorm events up there. But certainly for Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Oklahoma, that threat will present itself. We do see a tandem team of lows here across the mountainous west, again, continuing to bring rainfall and snowfall depending on your location out there for the west. Thursday the 6th, we do see this low finally organized from this area of instability. We continue to have the isolated thunderstorm events underneath. We do have a warm front, a pretty well-defined warm front out to the east there, so continued warming for the east here by Thursday. Snowfall for the upper Midwest and then eastern Canada over top. And again, no super defined cold front here. We'll see if that develops here in the coming hours afterwards. And it kind of does, actually. We see a dragging area that is the boundary between the warmth and the cold here, dragging behind and underneath that low. So don't even be surprised if we do see a thunderstorm event for these areas. I know it seems pretty far to the north, but this seems pretty juicy to me, and maybe would even present itself as a risk for severe weather. We are a bit far out, so it's hard to say, but this look features high humidity and warmth reaching well into the mid-Atlantic and Ohio Valley from the Gulf, and some Arctic air trying to move in behind this low. So that combo could lead to some active things for sure. And this is one of the quieter frames we've seen for the West, but still snowfall is around for different areas of the mountain ranges, so can't even call it completely quiet. As we move towards that Friday afternoon, Again, continued spotty snowfall out west. Really cold though. The jet stream is clearly troughing in the west, ridging in the east by this point, the 7th. And we see these thunderstorms rising up from the Gulf again in this warm corridor. Maybe showers the further north you go. That's going to be a common theme here for a while. And by Friday, we see the cold finally moving, or Saturday, better yet, the 8th here, we see the cold finally trying to make a push towards the east. And this is coming right as we see some warm trending in for the southwest. This is kind of forcing the cold to tilt eastward. We do get a very weak low somewhere in here, bringing some snowfall to the Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, and southern New England states here for Saturday the 8th. So this is when we could potentially get back in towards these coastal storms and snowfall along the east. We do have potential for some thunderstorms underneath, and I know I keep saying that, but really this pattern is so highly sufficient for thunderstorm events that it's always worth noting here, especially when we're looking at early February. People aren't super used to that being a common thing this time of year, but it does appear like this pattern will be sufficient for that. As we move towards Sunday, we see that cold just continues to move eastward, and we basically get a full-blown eastern cool down here by the Sunday the 9th time frame. Ridge is building out west. Trough is well defined in the east here, and we're likely below freezing down to the Gulf states again. So some serious cold moving back in by the 9th time frame. So again, right in line with what I was kind of saying the models, or the long-range models, are pointing at. We do have some snowfall here across the northern Rockies and northern plains, but quieter as far as precipitation is concerned for that Sunday time frame. Monday, we're kind of getting a second blast of it, as there's clearly some cold trying to move in. We still have the trough in the east, but it's likely getting kind of a refueling there from the north. Some snowfall across the Great Lakes as we get a snowfall event there, but again, quieter around the nation. By Tuesday, things are looking very interesting. That low develops and moves northward up into Canada. We see some snowfall for the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast here. And again, this cool down is maybe even worsening by this time frame. And we still have warmth along the southwest, which will act as a positive PNA, which is likely the driving force behind this cold moving back towards the east. This is certainly something to watch if we see lows trying to develop again in this western Gulf of Mexico area. It looks like we have that happening here. Again, it's beyond 10 days, so it's really, really not worth it to look into the specifics. But if the models continue to trend at storms developing here while we have the cold very far to the south, we might be back on board, believe it or not, for further south snowfall as well, if this is correct. And by Wednesday, we see that one doesn't develop in particular, but again, the potential was there, and this model is trending at the potential. Wednesday is still very cold. Thursday, the 13th, is still much colder, and this ridge out west is actually developing further, I would say. It's moving up into the northwest now, so we're seeing this push and encroach even further towards the north, which is causing this cold to basically just anchor in place. Now we're looking at like the 4th or 5th day in a row on this model of cold, so a more sustained cold pattern is being picked up by the European model at this point. And there's one of those deeper south snowfall events, as you can see. I'll replay it a little bit, but we see it move up from the Gulf. That energy moves up from the Gulf. We see Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, Virginia, perhaps. It's not the coldest in the world by this point, so we don't get the most major snowfall event, but it just goes to show the potential that we do have in place. When we look at the 0Z GFS model run from yesterday, I'm going to glance at these because I have 2 of them, so we don't have all day, but this one is going to be snowier and colder, just like the European model. And then the 12Z run from today is going to be much warmer than both of these model runs. So it shows that they're kind of jumping all over the place. Again, 0Z run from just overnight last night. We do see this first thunderstorm event happening, and that definitely is going to be impactful, not only with heavy rain, but could have some severe weather implications. We get a snowfall event here for the 2nd for the Great Lakes and then into the Northeast, a pretty heavy one at that. We get another kind of northern exclusive snowfall event here around the 5th, 6th. So we're still getting snowfall even in the warmer period here. Some thunderstorms perhaps here as we move towards the 7th. As we keep going, another kind of Ohio, well, really we start out in the Rockies, even the Sierra Nevada with this one. It's across the nation. Rockies, Plains, Midwest, Ohio Valley and Great Lakes, and then Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. We get a major winter storm here for the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, maybe. Not even hardly the 9th, but the 8th for sure. And then we're left very cold after the 9th. And it looks familiar because the European model showed the same exact thing. And again, we get this energy just sitting over the western Gulf of Mexico, and this is what we saw back in mid-January. And that's something to watch, because watch what happens. It kind of combines with a northern piece of energy, and we get another kind of plains, Rockies, Midwest snowfall here for the 12th. And then that moves up into the mid-Atlantic and Northeast as well. So all of a sudden, these models trending at potential snowy conditions as we reach the midway point of the month of February. Not even the midway point, the 8th through the 15th. I mean, we're looking at 1 week of warmth if this is correct for February, which is why I've been saying that I don't think winter is over. Everybody's been throwing in the towel in the comments, and it's not certain that winter is over. Obviously, we could end up a lot warmer than this, as the next model run is going to show, and we could just roll with that all the way into March. If that's the case, then yes, it's going to be a lot less wintry moving forward than it was in December or January. But if the European model run, again, from this afternoon, it came out literally an hour ago from the time I'm recording this, or this model run that came out just about 10 hours ago or so from the GFS, if these are correct, this warm-up is nothing compared to the cold that we're going to be seeing after it. Let's take a look at that warmer model run real quickly, and we will be comparing the snowfall totals to all 3 of these model runs, by the way, later on, so stay tuned for that. This run is similar all the way through the 2nd. We get the snowfall in the Northeast, the 5th, 6th here. A little warmer, perhaps, with this snowfall event that we see across the Midwest, Great Lakes, and Northeast. Thunderstorms look more prevalent on this warmer model run, which shouldn't come as a surprise for areas of the Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, and then down to the Southeast by Friday the 7th. We do end up with some cold around the 8th, 9th. Look at that. We do have the cold around. And it's pretty deep, but we get the warm-up right away after. We get this storm basically hooking around the trough in the west. And that features a warm front here. Not that big, but we get a warm front here that's pushing the warmth up northward in the east, and that basically disrupts the whole pattern. We see snowfall for the Great Lakes, Northeast there. But then we end up with a less cold look. We get this one here. And this is a classic low, by the way. This one right here. Warm front, very, very obvious. Warm air surging up the east coast here. Humid air as well. And then a very, very, very defined cold front here, likely bringing thunderstorms to many areas and even severe weather on this model run. And that does pull in some cold air, but as you can see, it kind of glides over the southeast. It doesn't dive southward. It's almost moving like northeastward. So it's very, very quick and short-lived. And that's going to lead to a much warmer overall look, if we were to look at the whole thing, than your previous 0Z run. Still, I mean, this pattern isn't completely winterless for the east, but it's not nearly as cold as that 0Z GFS run or the European models run from today that came out on the same time frame as this one. Let's take a look at the total precipitation, and this is according to the European model. Tons out west, as again the storminess does not basically let up at all. This eastern area where we have storms rising up and cold fronts coming through is going to be active as well. And when we look at the anomalies, it reflects this above average a lot of the west and above average for these specific locations in the east. As we look at the total snowfall on the European model, one thing to note is that there's monstrous amounts for the mountainous west. The northern plains and upper Midwest and Great Lakes do quite well. And then we see some of the Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, and Northeast getting quite a bit of snowfall in here. So, a pretty snowy pattern. It's not the most snowy in the world, but it is average at least. So definitely not winterless, or not, winter. We're not throwing in the towel that winter's over looking at this. When we look at the GFS model run, the 0Z from last night, it's even juicier. We see tons of snowfall out west. Similarly, a lot of this snowfall across the plains. Ohio Valley is much further south. We see plowable amounts well into here, into the Mid-Atlantic. Northeast is feet and feet of snowfall. A lot of the northern plains and Midwest still do equally good, as well as the Great Lakes. So this is much more wintry, clearly an above average snowfall pattern if this model is correct. But looking at the 12Z run from today, it's definitely much more north-based. Much more north-based. Again, Rockies and the Cascades and Sierra Nevada do great on all 3 of these, so there's hardly any doubt that they're going to get just walloped. But the northern plains, upper Midwest, and Great Lakes are probably the only area that does better on this model run than the 0Z run. We are seeing 1 to 2, maybe even 3 feet in this area here. But when you look at the Ohio Valley, more the central plains, Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, and even the Northeast here, this is clearly a downgrade from what I'm going to show you here, to here, that is clearly less for every single spot basically in this circle. So we have the models flip-flopping a bit on how wintry this upcoming pattern is going to be. But the European model has stood pretty strong on this premise of a more cold and snowy pattern moving forward. The GFS model, although it's jumping back and forth, might come around to it. We're going to have to wait and see. The long-range guidance would point more towards the European model and the previous GFS model we just looked at, as opposed to this one. So there is reason to believe that this one might be the minority here in this case. As we take a look at the temperature pattern, we can see warmer conditions are going to prevail for the most part here, especially tomorrow on Friday the 31st along a lot of the east and central states. We do get that backdoor cold front for Saturday the 1st, which will cool things down for parts of the mid-Atlantic and northeast here. Then, after this point for Sunday, we're warm right back up. Monday the 3rd, Tuesday the 4th, we're warmer. Wednesday the 5th, Thursday the 6th, Friday the 7th here, very warm along the east. But we see this cool down moving in, and it does move in by the 9th. Seriously cold on the 9th. The 10th there is quite cold. The 11th, remember, it refuels up. This is that happening. So Tuesday the 11th. Wednesday the 12th here, very, very cold. Thursday the 13th, quite cold with warmer air across a lot of the northern plains and Midwest. An overall colder look when we look at the whole model run. GFS model run, this is the 0Z run. Again, warmer for the most part. Until about the 8th, 9th, 10th, this is when that colder air moves in, similarly to the European model. We see it refuel for the 12th, 13th, 14th, and we do substantially warm up as we move later on, but you can still tell that there's a warmer air mass over the southwest, and this is going to kind of just make this cold kind of want to slide around that and move into the east. We've seen this a lot this year. So this is still a colder look in the east moving forward. But when we look at the 12Z run, we're going to see big differences. When we look at the 7th, 8th, 9th, we get a little cool down there. It stays cold for a while, but look at this. That is a serious warm up for the 12th, 13th, 14th. And it looks like cold might be moving in, but we start to see this warmer air pushing back up. The only thing I would say as a flaw with this is that we have substantial warmth out west. This is a pretty substantial positive PNA, so it's weird for the warmth to also be rising up in the east here. Typically, with this feature here, the positive PNA, and then the very far negative cold temperatures here, you'd be expecting that to glide right into the east. So, yeah, looking more and more optimistic every single day. If you watch all of our videos, you know that it's looking colder and snowier with every single model run that goes by. So certainly something to watch. I don't think we're done yet with the wintertime. I think there is more to track, and I'm excited to do it with you guys. So be sure to subscribe. We upload every single day. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.